The 6th of January 2011. A winter night on the MIT campus still, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the crunch of boots on wet pavement. Two campus police officers wrestle a young man to the ground near a basement stairwell. His backpack hits the concrete with a hollow thud. Inside, a hard drive, a laptop, a tangle of Ethernet cables. His breath fogs in the cold air. Somewhere above, a security camera blinks red. They cuff him, the tension quiet, almost clinical. No shouting, no drama, just a strange, surgical silence. One officer reads his rights. Another labels the evidence bag. MIT server room B42. The man's name is Aaron Swartz, 24 years old. He's not a criminal in the usual sense. He's a programmer, one who built the very architecture that powers modern information. RSS, Reddit, Creative Commons. A mind that believed knowledge should be free. But tonight, that idealism has collided with federal law. How did a fight for open knowledge turn into a federal manhunt? And how did one of the internet's brightest minds end up here, handcuffed in the shadows of the institution he tried to liberate? Aaron Swartz was born in Chicago in 1986, a time when the internet was still more dream than reality. From an early age, he didn't just use computers. He understood them the way some people understand music or language. At 12, while most kids were playing video games, Aaron was building websites. At 14, he helped create RSS-1, a code that allowed millions to receive news updates automatically, laying the foundation for how the modern web communicates. By 19, he had co-founded Reddit, one of the most influential social platforms in the world. The sale of Reddit to Condé Nast could have set him up for life. But money never interested him. The system did how it worked, who it excluded, and why. He saw the internet as the great equalizer, a library without walls, a classroom without borders. Yet, as he grew older, that vision began to clash with the institutions that guarded information behind paywalls and passwords. The academic world, rich with discoveries and ideas, was still locked behind corporate servers and subscription fees. One of the largest of these repositories was JSTOR, a digital library holding millions of research papers. To Aaron, this was a moral failure. He wasn't trying to profit. He wasn't trying to vandalize. He wanted access not for himself, but for everyone who couldn't afford it. In his mind, knowledge was a public good, and restricting it was theft from the future. In 2008, he published a manifesto, a fiery declaration called the Guerrilla Open Access Manifesto. In it, he wrote, "Information is power, but like all power, there are those who want to keep it for themselves." That single paragraph became both a prophecy and a curse, because 3 years later, on a quiet night at MIT, Aaron Swartz would act on that belief. He would step into the basement of one of the most prestigious universities in the world and begin the act that would define and ultimately destroy his life. The operation was simple in design, complex in consequence. In late 2010, Aaron Swartz slipped into the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's network, using guest access, no stolen credentials, no secret key. MIT's system, open by philosophy, was meant to encourage collaboration, but Aaron had a different purpose. He connected a laptop directly to the campus network and began an automated download from JSTOR, thousands of academic papers per minute. At first, JSTOR's administrators noticed unusual traffic. They thought it was a malfunction or a researcher gone rogue. But, as the scale grew, millions of documents pouring into the same IP address, alarm bells rang. The pattern was relentless, systematic, almost mechanical. JSTOR blocked the device. Aaron found a new one. They locked one port, he found another. The digital tug-of-war intensified until JSTOR realized this wasn't a mistake, it was an act of defiance. MIT security traced the traffic to a small wiring closet in the basement of a campus building. When they opened the door, they found a laptop hidden under a cardboard box, attached directly to the network switch, quietly harvesting data. They installed a surveillance camera. Days later, it caught him, a young man in a bike helmet, entering the room, checking the laptop, and leaving without a word. The footage was grainy, but the movements were clear. On the 6th of January 2011, MIT police, working with the U.S. Secret Service, detained Aaron Swartz. The charges that followed were far beyond what anyone expected. Federal prosecutors accused him, under the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, a 1986 law, written in the era of dial-up modems and floppy disks. They framed the download as a massive, intentional intrusion wire fraud, computer fraud, data theft. The total, 13 felony counts. Potential sentence, 35 years in prison. Fines up to $1 million. Yet, JSTOR itself, the so-called victim, declined to press charges. They recovered all the files and wanted to move on. MIT, conflicted between its ethos of openness and its institutional duty, remained silent. But the Department of Justice pressed forward, determined to make an example. For Aaron, this wasn't just a legal battle, it was an existential one. He refused to plead guilty to a felony. He refused to call his belief in open access a crime. But the weight of the U.S. government was immense. His friends later said the prosecutor's message was clear: plead guilty or be crushed. Behind closed doors, the stress grew unbearable. His partner and friends saw the toll: insomnia, isolation, endless legal costs. Still, he kept fighting, convinced that his cause was just. In public, he was quiet. In private, he was breaking. As the case dragged into 2012, Aaron continued to work, channeling his energy into activism. That year, he helped organize one of the largest online protests in history, the movement against the Stop Online Piracy Act, SOPA. When Wikipedia, Google, and thousands of sites went dark in unison, it was Aaron's strategy that lit the spark. Congress backed down. The bill died. But even in victory, he couldn't escape what awaited him in court. The prosecutors refused to back off. The full weight of federal law was still aimed at him. And the countdown to January 2013, his trial date, had begun. The case of United States v. Aaron Swartz never reached the jury. But in the months before it could, the courtroom drama unfolded in motions, negotiations, and moral battles behind closed doors. Assistant U.S. Attorney Stephen Heyman and U.S. Attorney Carmen Ortiz framed the case as a matter of principle, a deliberate, large-scale theft of intellectual property. They spoke of deterrence, of sending a message to future hackers. To them, the intent didn't matter. The system had been breached. The law, they insisted, was clear. Aaron's defense team saw it differently. They argued that MIT's network was open, that no passwords were broken, that no data was sold or leaked. This was a breach of terms of service, they said, not a crime of theft. Even JSTOR's representatives, sitting quietly in the back, had withdrawn any claim of harm. Yet, the prosecutors pushed harder, adding charges, stacking penalties, magnifying the pressure. Each new filing brought a fresh wave of dread. The plea deals offered were cruelly conditional. Plead guilty to a felony, accept months in prison, surrender your future. Aaron refused. To admit guilt, he said, would betray everything he stood for, the belief that information belongs to everyone. MIT, caught between ideals and bureaucracy, issued cautious statements but never took a stand. Their silence hurt him most. Friends described his disillusionment, the institution that had inspired him, now watching him drown. He told one friend, they'd rather see me as a problem than a student. By late 2012, the prosecution's tone had hardened. They prepared to make him an example, a modern-day warning for a digital age. Aaron's mental state deteriorated under the strain. The endless hearings, the legal costs, the uncertainty, it all weighed like a quiet avalanche. His supporters noticed the fatigue in his eyes, the long silences, the rare moments when his confidence cracked. On the 11th of January 2013, 2 days after his lawyer filed a new motion to dismiss, Aaron's partner found him in their Brooklyn apartment. He had taken his own life. The news rippled across the internet like a shockwave. Vigils erupted from San Francisco to Berlin. Reddit went dark in mourning. MIT's servers crashed under the flood of grief and outrage. To millions, it felt like the system had broken a man who only wanted to make it better. A few days later, prosecutors quietly dropped the case. The record read, charges dismissed due to the defendant's death. But for many, that line felt hollow and ending without justice. The death of Aaron Swartz sent a shock through two worlds at once, technology and justice. In the digital community, it was seen as a tragedy born of principle. In the legal world, a cautionary tale of overreach. To his friends and family, It was something far simpler, an unbearable loss. Within days, candlelight vigils appeared on college campuses across the world. Lines of code lit up in his memory, programmers leaving hidden tributes in websites, messages that read, "For Aaron." At MIT, students projected his name across the main dome in white light. For a generation of internet activists, it wasn't just mourning, it was a rallying cry. Lawmakers took notice. U.S. Representative Zoe Lofgren introduced a reform bill called Aaron's Law, designed to amend the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, CFAA, the same law that prosecutors had used to threaten Aaron with decades in prison. The proposal aimed to narrow the definition of unauthorized access, distinguishing criminal hacking from simple terms of service violations. But as the months turned to years, Aaron's Law stalled in Congress, caught in the same gridlock that had driven him to fight in the first place. MIT, facing public backlash, launched an internal review of its role in the prosecution. The findings were diplomatic, neither condemnation nor defense, but they could not undo the damage. To many, the university had betrayed its ethos of openness. To others, it had become an emblem of how institutions choose safety over principle. Meanwhile, Aaron's legacy grew. His work on RSS still powers millions of websites. His contributions to Reddit helped shape the modern internet. His activism inspired the very movement that continues to fight for digital transparency, privacy rights, and open access to knowledge. Each year, on January 11, memorial posts flood the web not as eulogies, but as reminders. People remember his words, etched into countless forums, manifestos, and hearts. It's not enough to be angry. You have to be constructive. Aaron Swartz didn't live to see his ideals fulfilled. The laws remain largely the same, the gatekeepers still guard their servers, but his fight for knowledge, for access, for fairness never truly ended. His story became the question every generation of technologists now faces. If information is power, who should hold it?